If you want to take the Duolingo English test and get the score you deserve, there's a couple of things you have to know. When you sit down to look at the screen, does this happen? You start translating in your head, then you forget your ideas, and because you forget your ideas, you start to stumble, mumble, don't know what to say next, and then eventually you go silent. If this is your problem, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to fix it in this video, so keep watching. But first, how do I know that my methods work, and how do I know that they can help you? Well, I know because my students like Iris and Isabella, they had to take an English speaking test as well. When they first started taking lessons with me, they couldn't say anything.
A little hint of spiciness, like a little hint of soy sauce.
What is a hint?
I don't even know. It just sounds like a good word.
The thoughts were there, they just weren't coming out of their mouth. So what did we do to help them get the score they need so they could get into the school that they wanted and be able to travel internationally? Well, I taught them a couple of techniques, and this might come as a surprise to you, but memorizing wasn't one of them. So why am I talking about memorizing? How is that connected to the Duolingo English test? Well, most students, when they sit down and start to study for the Duolingo English test, they do what is called passive studying. That means instead of actually using English with native speakers, they look for shortcuts, hacks, like scripts. And if you go to Google and you type in Duolingo English test scripts, you'll find a ton of them. But I'll tell you firsthand from my own experiences that using a script is actually more harmful than it is helpful. So why do I say that? As I'm talking to you in this video, I'm not using a script. I'm thinking about big ideas and moving through them step by step. If you sit down on the Duolingo English test and you try to use a script, you're going to be memorizing the exact information that you think the test wants to hear. And this sounds like it might be great, but when you understand how the Duolingo English test works, it's very evident that this is not the right path forward. What do I mean by that? The Duolingo English test actually uses adaptive testing. That means once you have a question and you start speaking about it, the test, as you move on, will change its level to figure out what your overall English level is. Now, when I say overall, I don't just mean speaking. I mean listening, speaking, reading, and writing, the 4 fundamental areas that anybody needs to be proficient in a second language. So how can we beat this memorization technique, and what can we do to ensure that when we sit down to look at the screen, we know what to say and we don't stumble over our words? And more importantly, if you do stumble over your words, what can you do to fix it? The solution is quite simple, but a lot of people don't want to hear it. And I know this because I lived it myself. I actually speak Spanish to a very high level, and if you look through my channel, you'll actually find some of those videos. This is quite some time ago. I wasn't as good at recording, and I definitely wasn't as good at speaking, but let me tell you how I got better at this, because it kind of mirrors how you have to get better at English. Well, the first thing I did was I kept making more videos. I have another channel, not just this one, and in that channel, I help people by talking about how I find my students, but that's not important. What's important is if you look through both of my channels, you'll see that I've been making videos for quite some time. Just like with language, as I kept going making more videos, I got better and better. So what is the key to actually stopping the translation trap that you're in and stopping the memorization that you have been told is the right way to take the Duolingo English test? Well, the answer is quite simple. You have to be using English every single day. But we have to differentiate here. We have to say what is good study and what is bad study. If we think about bad study, you can find loads of these techniques online. The first one is using a script for the Duolingo English test speaking portion. The next is memorizing lots of vocabulary, reading lots of books, and only focusing on grammar. I used to live in Colombia, and when I went over there, everybody told me my Spanish was great. But this isn't because I studied it at university, and it definitely isn't because I got a master's degree in the language. The reason they told me I was proficient and could speak well is because I had mastered the art of speaking to people. I understood the tricks that we can use to keep speaking if we make a mistake. I understood that if I make a mistake, I don't need to tell the people about it. Instead, I have to do something else, that way they keep listening to me. Attention is very important, and when you learn how to get people's attention, you'll learn how to be a better speaker. Now, I want to tell you a story about one of my students named Nu. Nu is from Vietnam, and she hired me to help her with a Duolingo English test. And after a couple lessons, I quickly realized Nu actually didn't need help with the Duolingo English test. What she needed help with was daily practice in English. She knew lots of words, lots of vocabulary, but in the moment when it came time to use those words, she completely froze, had no idea what to say. So to help her, I taught her some speaking techniques, such as before and after, and you've probably heard of a couple others, which I go into detail in when I'm teaching. The key to being fluent in a language is not using a script, and the key to passing the Duolingo English test is not memorizing. The key is small, consistent practice every day. When Nu signed up for my course, she was only taking English with me, and everything else she was doing was reading and writing. And this creates a problem because she thought that she was studying, but this is something called passive study. Think about it like this. When you were a baby, did you passively take in your first language? Definitely not. You needed to communicate, so you found a way to do it. Instead of telling your mom you wanted milk, you might have done something like this. Or later, when you could actually speak and you didn't know a word, you probably found a different way to get your point across. The same thing works for the Duolingo English test. It's not magic, it's not scripts, it's not cramming nonstop, it's small, consistent steps and daily practice. So what is one of the structures I used with Nu to help her to be able to speak fluently and get the grade that she needed on the Duolingo English test? Well, it's a simple method that I call the 1-2-2-1 method. And when I explain it to you, you're going to say, wow, this is simple. But I promise you, putting it into practice, especially if you're not using English every day or consuming English and practicing with other speakers every single day, it's going to be difficult for you. First, we have to start with what our point is. State your opinion. Then, once you state your opinion, you're going to give 2 examples. If you don't know how to do examples, that's fine. There's a lot of resources out there. As a matter of fact, go ahead and click the link in the description and you can read my blog post where I outline all of this. And in that blog post, I give you some links to other activities on my website that will help you with listening and speaking. So click it now. And I hope to see you there. But what is the number 2? Because if number 1 is opinion, what is the next 2? It's examples. Well, these examples are very difficult for people if they're not thinking in English. That's because whenever you start to speak about an example, you're not thinking, what have I lived? What have I done? And how can I relate this? Really, in order to make a good example and to give a lot of detail, which really will get you a higher score on the Duolingo English test, you need to have clear-cut examples that come from your experiences. So, what is the other one? The other one is state your opinion again, but do it in a different way. This is directly an academic skill called paraphrasing. That means we take one idea and we change it and we give it to somebody in a different way. But when we do this, we have to be careful. A big mistake students make is changing what the meaning is. Whenever we paraphrase, we never change the meaning. We just give the same idea. And that can be a little bit hard, again, if you're not using English every single day. But once Nu started to use all of these techniques, her speaking time increased from less than a minute and her starting only after 5 or 10 seconds to what you see now.
I think this is bad because the uniform is uncomfortable. For example, I am in the physics lessons and the uniform feeling me bad and I can't focus on the lessons.
Let me explain what's actually going on here. Nu stopped memorizing, but what does that process look like? Instead of memorizing what she should say by staring at something and reading it repeatedly, she actually started to think in English. But that didn't come easily. She had to have daily practice and daily activities that pushed her to think in English. And more importantly, she needed the feedback to know that she was improving. Whenever you do this, your brain frees up a lot of processing power. Whenever you're thinking about what you've memorized, you have to think word for word. This can create issues. But if you start to think in English and you start to think in concepts, what you can do is make this process a lot lighter. It'll allow you time and free up brain energy to let you think about the next thing you're going to say. So, what I want you to do after watching this video is go put this into practice. This is the scary part. Do it. And I know this is really scary because when I was talking to someone in Spanish before, I accidentally told an entire room of Spanish speakers that I was pregnant. Definitely not something that I want to happen to me. Even if you keep making the mistakes, push on, push on. Don't stop talking and don't worry about someone else's thinking. Because once you start to worry about what they're thinking, you start to doubt yourself. And when you start to doubt yourself, you stop speaking. That's it. That's the simplest way to stop freezing when you're taking the Duolingo English test, the speaking portion. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button below. That helps me find more people to help. And you'll also see more videos when I make them. I hope this was super helpful. Don't forget to check the links in the description because I have some really good English practice materials that you can use to help you improve your English every day. And just a heads up, one of them on my website is a 10-minute dialogue between myself and another person speaking English. But here's what makes this even more valuable. I'm American by birth. This person is British by birth. So what we do is we go through and we talk about the different types of words because I'm also a British citizen. If that sounds like something you want, don't forget the links in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video.